Hey friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. And today I'm going to do something I've not done before really. I'm going to be reviewing two knives. These are two different versions of the Pyrite. Yes, I said the name correctly this time. CJRB Pyrite. I've got the J1925 T or TI. So that's a titanium handle with the original drop point blade. And I've got the, is it A? Yes, 1925A-BST. They also got the ST in basically exactly the same except for it looks like steel and not coated. Stonewashed. This is their Wharncliffe style blade. There's not as many of these versions out right now, but there's more coming out all the time. I just got an email from CJRB, 2 days ago, asking if they could send me some more versions of the Pyrite to do reviews of. I declined that. Maybe I'll contact them back and say sure, because one of them is their large version. This is the original size, the original one. Then they came out with a Wharncliffe in almost the identical size, and now they've got a large version as well, and I'll talk more about that later on. But I'm going to try to review both of these knives at once, but my video won't be 40 minutes long. Most of my reviews are around 20 minutes long. This will not be 40 minutes long. It won't be half an hour long. I'll just have to edit it down. Basically, I'm going to talk about both knives at once, except I'm going to have two sections for the dimensions just in case you guys want them, even though most of these dimensions are the same. So let's get started. Come on down to the tabletop with me and let's check out the review of the CJRB Pyrite. Probably the one thing that I get more thanks for in my videos is the fact that I do teardowns. And yes, I will do a teardown in this video, so you'll see how they're constructed. And this was one of the early versions. This is still with the same original steel. It's AR RPM 9. That's Artisan Cutlery / CJRB's proprietary, well, yeah, they got it designed for them. They're AR RPM 9. It's a powder steel, stainless steel. Rockwell hardness is around 60. It's got good toughness, good edge retention, good durability. You know, it's not super excelling in any of those, but it's very good, especially for a budget steel. It's the quality-wise, it's more of a mid-grade steel. I have four categories of steel: budget steel, mid-grade steel, high-end steel, and premium steels. You know, I don't really review premium steels, and I rarely review high-end steels. I tend to stick in the mid-range and budget steel category. And these knives fit that category. Price-wise, around 50 bucks US, 79 US in most places. You can get some versions of the original drop point blade in Canada, and I'll leave links down below to make it easier for you to get them. I got mine directly from Artisan Cutlery, and they sent these to me. So yes, I got these at not no cost to me. You know, I got them shipped, of course, to the usual address that I get them shipped in the United States. And then Dave took them apart for me and mailed them up to me, blades and handles separately. So I had to pay all the shipping for that, which isn't really all that cheap. But so I do have some money invested in these. But yes, these were technically given to me by the company themselves. First off, let's talk about the drop point blade. This is the original style, and it's very well designed. We've got a flat grind here. It's a high flat grind, not quite to the spine, so it's not a full flat grind. And it's got a nice drop point and then a nice belly back here. It almost looks like a spear point if you ignore the grinds. Not quite, you know, the drop here is not quite at the same radius as the belly, but it's a well done design. And I am so very thankful that they chose to do stonewash. I really, really like stonewash finish on a knife. Very good for a user. And so originally you've got these, we've got several different handle finishes. This is stainless steel, this is titanium, there's G10, there's titanium with inset materials, carbon fiber, like not just straight carbon fiber, but you know, those composites with different colors and stuff in them. A load of different ways of doing these. It's fairly straight. It does curve back a little bit to help it fit into the palm of the hand in terms of, comfort and stuff. And basically, these two are just steel or titanium, and of course recesses inside to make them a bit lighter. The titanium one doesn't have those recesses, and it's still a little bit lighter. Lanyard hole back here. You've got 2 screws to put it together. You've got a deep carry pocket clip that works on either side. It looks pretty good on either side. It's not like a big cutout there or anything. It's just decent looking. The edges are chamfered a little bit. There's a little bit of a relief cut here for your grip. And of course, the thing that I haven't mentioned at all, it's a button lock knife. It's a button lock design, which basically means if you're holding it just right, it'll close basically with gravity. And if you're holding it just right, you can make it open. It won't necessarily go to the lock position unless you let go of the button, but I think that's why if you try to import this into Canada, there's a good chance it's going to get confiscated as a gravity knife. CBSA tends to think of button lock knives that way, especially when they've got really smooth action like these ones do. Inside, we've got ceramic ball bearings, and we'll show you those a little bit later. The other difference is what we got here originally, it's a thumb stud deployment, or of course using the lock like I did. And when they did the Wharncliffe, they did it with this hole here, so we've got the hole deployment right there, and that's pretty good. Now, depending on what agent you get from CBSA, both thumb stud and hole deployment knives are they get less scrutiny in general than flipper knives do, so it might get across the border, you never know. But like I said, you can get this at bladescanada.com, that's aka Warriors and Wonders. At least 6 different versions of this knife, not the titanium, but this style right here, 6 different ways. We've got a Wharncliffe blade, that's what they're calling it. Since CJRB is calling this a Wharncliffe, I'm going to call this a Wharncliffe blade. Again, a flat grind that comes almost all the way to the spine and very much the same length. The cutting edge is very similar, tiny bit shorter on this guy, but not much. And the blade length itself is very much the same as well, although they're not identical, but they're very, very close in dimensions. What do I think of the cutting performance on these knives? Well, they're not too thick behind the grind. And with the belly the way it is, even this one with the way the belly is, it's a good slicer, good cutter, and pretty good piercer. Don't take much away from this one. This one still is a very good slicer and a cutter, but it's still a pretty good piercer as well with the way this, is angled back and the edge the way it is, it still pierces fairly well. So it's really not that far behind this guy in the piercing. What other differences do we have here? This is titanium. This has got PVD coating on the blade. And I don't have any marks on it yet from my testing. Pretty much I like almost everything about this, but I do have one con. And well, maybe 2, but they're very much related to one another that I'd like to mention at this point. And that is this big choil right here. It's very big as a sharpener's choil on both of these, but I'll leave a mark on here. This one's got a bevel. I need a marker. This pen's not marking. A sloping plunge that terminates not quite, but very close to that line. And so it's like a flat slide coming down from the full thickness down to the main bevel. And so it ends just there. So as a sharpener's choil, it's the right size for that plunge. That's okay. This one here doesn't have the same kind of, maybe it's the PVD coating hiding it, but it's got a plunge that's pretty much a little bit, it's not going to show up on there and I don't want to scratch it. It doesn't come quite as far out as this one does, to the heel of the blade. But it's a slow transition. Now, they did choose that spot to put CJRB, and I like that. So the badging's nice and small. I didn't talk about the badging before. I appreciate small badging. Over here is the model, the main model type, J1925 and AR RPM 9. I really like the small badging. But that's, a side point. That slow plunge means you need to make the sharpener's choil that big. But that means when you're holding the knife, the cutting edge is almost a full finger thickness away, but that's not big enough for a proper finger choil unless your hands are, you know, men's small. Maybe some men's medium might fit a finger in there. I just wish that maybe they could have put CJRB up here, but still keep it really small, or, you know, up here on this one. Bring that ricasso back and make it quicker plunge. That way the sharpener's choil is small, and that way you can get, you know, a cutting edge closer to your index finger. I would have really much appreciated that. So I'm not that fond of this zone. So the sharpener's choil and the plunge combination, because of, you know, the grip thing. You know, especially after I sharpen my own knives, that becomes much too sharp to, you know, put my finger there, because I will cut myself. It just will happen. Now from the factory, the sharpness is pretty good, but, you know, I do custom knife sharpening and I can do a whole lot better than what they've provided from the factory. I didn't talk quite enough about the pocket clip. Let's take a closer look at that. It does come out past the end of the handle, and it's a nice, you know, clip. 2 screws there. These are T6 screws, which I don't prefer, and these are T6 button screws, which again I don't prefer. They're sort of okay-ish. Let's take a look here. They fit well, and they fit deeper. Like 5 years ago, T6 screws on almost every brand were absolutely terrible, and they're getting better. You know, QSP has almost always done good T6 screws, but you know, these companies like CJRB, Artisan Cutlery, are doing better T6 screws than they used to, but I still don't like them. I would much prefer it to be T8 screws everywhere. We've got a T8 screw up here, and you know, it's got a little bit of play in it, not an awful lot, but it's a, you know, deep enough screw. It's a bit of a button screw. That's okay. Now the T6 flush screws at the pocket clip, got to get the T6 driver to do that. They've got more play than the button screws do, but they've got less depth of bite as well. So the screws that are most likely to get stripped on these knives is the pocket clip screws. So be careful with the pocket clip screws, because they just might strip out even if you've got really good quality drivers. Let's show you the pocket clip in the pocket. They climb over, they go to the full depth. It hides the knife quite well. I like the stonewash finish on here. Or of course, you can get the one with the PVD coating. It's a decent pocket clip. A few other things that I didn't mention earlier, but that doesn't mean they're less important, is the jimping. On this Wharncliffe one, we've got very short jimping. We've got like 4, you know, bumps in between 5 notches. Over here, we've got like 6 bumps in between 7 notches. I'd still like this to be a little bit longer, and I'd certainly like this one to be a little bit longer, so that there's jimping over here. I'd like there to be jimping over here where I have my thumb now. That would be preferred. At least the jimping's not bad. The other thing I forgot to mention is the balance point. The black one's got the balance point completely after this notch right there. And the titanium one, because it's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit forward of that, right there. If the handle was heavier, you know, then of course I'd have to move it back a bit. The other thing is the alignment. The alignment on this black one is pretty much right down the middle, and the alignment on this one is again right down the middle. So those things are quite good about this knife. And I didn't really mention it before, but yes, this lanyard hole is nice. It's got chamfering, and it's certainly big enough for 550 paracord. So if you prefer, you know, lanyards, that's good. I won't talk any more about the button lock. I did in the intro, or early in the video a little bit. It's a decent working button lock, and the action's quite smooth. Now let's take one of these apart, and I'll show you how it's constructed. So I've taken the screws off of these. One thing I forgot, because I had gotten these a while back, you know, because of my being sick, I didn't take notes on everything. These do have D-shaped pins, but they don't have D-shaped receivers in these handle scales, and so they're free spinning. I did not need 2 screwdrivers, just the pressure of my finger on the other side got it out. There is Loctite on these screws, but not super tight Loctite, so I didn't have any problems. Now when you go to take this apart, there's a spring behind that button lock on this side, and that's going to want to spring loose. So be careful when you open it up. You might make the spring go flying. So just be careful with that. So there you go. There's this relief cut, these triangles cut in there to reduce the weight of the handle scales on both sides. The titanium one does not have that, but I'll just show that to you. It opens up a little bit easier if you've got the blade slightly deployed. If you've got it in the totally locked position, it doesn't want to come apart quite as easily. There's the button lock. We've got, almost dropped it, ceramic ball bearings, a decent size. So they're not bad ceramic ball bearings. What is there? There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10. That's pretty good. 10 ball bearings. It's very common for this size to have just 9, but these have 10. More ball bearings is better. But these, as you can see right there, there is a race because the titanium's not hard enough for the ball bearings. So they added a race for those. That does increase the cost a little bit, but not an awful lot. And it does make it a whole lot better. There you go. It's decent construction, very standard construction. I'm not going to explain how a button lock works. We don't have time in this video to do that. These button locks are done fairly well. Just before we do the sizes and dimensions, I'll mention one more. I don't know, it's not a con, it's just I would prefer it to be different. On the all black version, we've got shiny steel standoffs and a shiny steel button lock button. I wish the all black version was literally all black. It's like I said, the handles are going to be the same. So I'll go over this one the first, and the handle measurements I will only go over once. Now this knife, this is the J1925 A-BST. Of course, the one that's just steel and not with the PVD coating is just the A-ST. All right, what's the price of this thing? This one's $54.95 at White Mountain Knives, but you save 10% with coupon code CCE, making it $49.45 USD. Other stores have it for $49 USD, so $64.99 at Blades Canada. So there's that. The weight of this model, 101 grams, 3.56 ounces, not bad. The sharpness from the factory, this guy was 165 best, which is quite good. So it's slightly below average, but still very good for sharpness. The cutting edge length, so the silver line that you see here, that is 71.7 millimeters, 2.82 inches long. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the handle, 79 millimeters, 3.11 inches. Yes, it's over 3 inches. The blade thickness, 2.63 millimeters, 0.104 of an inch, so basically a tenth of an inch thick. The blade depth, it's widest right here, 25.8 millimeters, which is 1.02 inches. How thick is it behind the grind? 0.49 millimeters, 19 thousandths of an inch. Grind angles, this side's got an average of 18.7 degrees. This side's got an average of 18.1 degrees. Started at 18.7, ended at 17.5, 1.2 degrees of change along the length. Pretty well sharpened. Comparatively, at least it's pretty well sharpened. This side started at 19.2, ended at 19.2, but it went down to 17.8, roughly in the middle. So again, 1.4 degrees of change, back and forth. Not bad, pretty good. Now for the handle, and like I said, the handle's the same on both of these in terms of the length dimensions. The handle length, not counting the pocket clip, 107.4 millimeters, that's 4.23 inches. The grip area, it's about 9 centimeters, 90 millimeters, 3.5 inches roughly. The thickness of the handle, this one is 10.3 millimeters, 0.406 of an inch. but the handle depth is the same on both 22 millimeters, 0.8667 inch. When the knife is closed, they're slightly different because of the blade shapes. This one's widest here, 31.9 millimeters, 1.26 inches. But the total length is very much the same, 186 millimeters, 7.32 inches. The various versions that they have, I think they've got 15 different handle types listed at CJRB. And of course, they got the 2 different blade types, but they got different steel types. They've got, of course, the AR RPM 9 that they started with. You can also get pattern welded, Damascus steel if you want. You can get S35VN, you can get S90V, and I didn't check if there were exclusive versions with different steels than that, but that's already 4 different types of steel that you can get for your blades. And of course, there's all kinds of different, handles. You got your steel, you got your titanium, you got G10 as well, and now you've got the large size. Do you want to learn? I'll give you just a few of the specs for the large size. On the large one, we have I'll do it with this one because the blade is about 3.7 inches, about 9.4 centimeters. And with the G10, it's $79 US as well. We've got about a 5-inch handle on the large version, which is about 127 millimeters, 12.7 centimeters. And the overall length for the large one is 8.6 inches. Well, I like this knife. It's a good design. The lock works quite well. The blade alignment on both of them is quite well. Feels comfortable in the hand. I thought it was going to feel slippery with this steel with the PVD coating. Titanium, to me, has never really felt all that slippery, but this has got a slight, I think probably a bead blast finish, and I didn't find it to be slick in my hands. Of course, your mileage may vary. It's a decent design. It does have a few little cons, like I mentioned. I don't like the T6 screws for big part. I don't like the way they did the plunge and the sharpener's choil. I wish that was smaller. Certainly they could do versions of this, especially with the large one. I haven't looked at details of the large one. Maybe it's got a finger choil that's even bigger. Could be, I don't know. Overall though, for the price of this knife, $50 for this, that's not bad for a good button lock that's got such smooth action. I think this is a winner. I think for the most part, it's a really good knife. There you go. That's my opinion. What do you think of these? Thank you very much for those of you who have been supporting me on Patreon. So here's the list of my current supporters. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel. And remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb.